The stagecoach rattled into Leavenworth, Kansas on a scorching July afternoon in 1872, carrying 7 passengers and one secret that would change everything Isaac Elwood thought he knew about silence and salvation. Isaac had been leaning against the post outside the mercantile when the coach pulled up in a cloud of dust thick enough to choke on. He was 26 years old, tall and sun-weathered from years of working cattle drives between Kansas and Texas, with hands that knew rope burns and leather reins better than they knew gentleness. His dark hair needed cutting, and his jaw needed shaving, but those were concerns that fell low on his list when he had horses to break and fences to mend at his modest ranch 5 miles outside town. The passengers climbed down one by one. A banker from St. Louis, 2 widows heading west to their brother's homestead, a preacher with kind eyes and worn boots, a salesman with cases full of patent medicines, an elderly couple holding hands like newlyweds, and then her. She stepped down last, and Isaac found himself straightening without meaning to. She wore a dress that had once been fine, pale blue with darker blue trim, now dusty from travel. Her hair was the color of warm honey in sunlight, pinned up but coming loose in ways that suggested she had stopped caring somewhere between here and wherever she had started. But it was her face that made Isaac forget to breathe for a moment. She was young, maybe 22 or 23, with features that would have been lovely if they had not been carved from exhaustion in something deeper, something that looked like the end of hope. She had no luggage except a small carpet bag that she clutched like it contained everything she had left in the world. Maybe it did. The stage driver was calling out arrivals, and the other passengers were scattering to their destinations, but she just stood there in the street looking around Leavenworth like she was trying to decide if this was far enough. Far enough from what, Isaac could not know, but he recognized running when he saw it. He watched her walk slowly toward the boarding house, her steps careful, deliberate. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the place, was on her porch, and Isaac was too far to hear the exchange, but he saw the young woman reach into a small purse and count out coins, saw Mrs. Patterson nod and gesture inside, saw the young woman disappear through the doorway like a ghost finally finding somewhere to haunt. Isaac went back to his business, picking up the supplies he had ordered, but he found his mind wandering back to that tired face and those careful steps. Leavenworth was not a large town, sitting along the Missouri River with Fort Leavenworth nearby, bringing in soldiers and their families, traders and travelers. The town had about 7,000 people, busy enough that a person could get lost if they wanted to, small enough that newcomers got noticed. 3 days later, Isaac saw her again at the general store. She was standing in front of the fabric, fingers touching a bolt of green cotton like she was remembering something. Sarah Miller, who ran the store with her husband, approached her with a friendly smile. "Can I help you find something, dear?" The young woman looked at Sarah, opened her mouth, then closed it again. She shook her head. Just shook her head, no words, and pointed to a small bag of flour, then to some beans, some coffee, salt, a few other basics. "You are staying at Patterson's boarding house?" Sarah asked, making conversation the way she did with everyone. Another nod. No words. "Well, welcome to Leavenworth. What brings you to Kansas?" The young woman's hands tightened on her carpetbag. She looked at Sarah with eyes that held so much sadness that even cheerful Sarah took a step back. Then the young woman shook her head again, paid for her goods in exact change counted out carefully, and left. Sarah turned to Isaac, who had been pretending to examine saddle soap while watching the whole exchange. Strangest thing. She has not said a single word. "Maybe she cannot speak," Isaac offered, though he did not believe it. There was something in those eyes that said she could speak just fine. She was choosing not to. "Maybe," Sarah said, but she sounded doubtful too. Isaac saw her again the next day, and the day after that. Leavenworth was not so big that paths did not cross. She walked through town like she was trying to become invisible, head down, steps quick. She never spoke. Not to anyone. People started noticing. "You hear about that girl at Patterson's?" Men would say at the saloon where Isaac sometimes went for a drink. "Pretty thing, but strange. Will not say a word to nobody." "Maybe she is simple," someone suggested. "She ain't simple. old Tom Crawford said. He had driven her somewhere in his wagon, and she had written down the address she needed. Her handwriting is real fine, educated. She just won't talk. By the second week, the whole town was curious. Women tried to draw her out with kindness. Men tipped their hats and got no response except a quick nod. Children stared openly until their mothers scolded them. Isaac found himself watching for her, though he could not have said why. There was something about her that pulled at him. Maybe it was the sadness. Maybe it was the mystery. Maybe it was the way she looked at the world like she was on the outside of it, pressing her face against glass she could not break through. It was a Sunday when things changed. 3 weeks after she had arrived, Isaac had ridden into town for the church service. He was not particularly devout, but his mother, God rest her, would have haunted him if he skipped too many Sundays. The church was a simple white building with a steeple that could be seen from most of the town. Inside it smelled like old wood and candle wax and the perfume the ladies wore on their best day. She was there, sitting in the back pew, alone, hands folded in her lap. Isaac found himself sliding into the pew across the aisle from her, though there were plenty of other seats. Reverend Thompson gave a sermon about redemption and new beginnings, and Isaac watched her from the corner of his eye. She sat perfectly still, but tears were sliding down her face in quiet streams. She did not wipe them away. Just let them fall. After the service, people gathered outside to talk the way they always did. Isaac saw her slip out quickly, heading down the street toward the boarding house. He followed without thinking about it too hard. "Miss," he called when he got close enough. She stopped, turned. Those tear-stained eyes found his face. "Miss, I am Isaac Elwood. I got a ranch outside town." He took off his hat, held it in his hands. "I was wondering if maybe you might need some work. I could use someone to help with cooking and such. The pay is not much, but it is honest, and the work is not too hard." She stared at him. He could see her thinking, weighing, considering. Then she shook her head. "You sure? Like I said, it is honest work. You would have your own room in the house. I sleep in the bunkhouse mostly anyway, meals included." Another shake. But she was still looking at him, and there was something in her expression that was not quite refusal. It was more like she was saying she could not rather than she did not want to. "Well," Isaac said, feeling foolish, "if you change your mind, anyone in town can tell you how to find my place. The Elwood Ranch, about 5 miles southwest." She nodded once, then turned and walked away quickly. That night, Isaac sat on his porch and wondered why he had made such an offer. He did not need help with cooking. He had been taking care of himself just fine since his parents died 4 years ago, leaving him the ranch and not much else. But there had been something in her eyes during that sermon, something broken that made him want to help piece it back together. He told himself to forget about it, to focus on his work. He had 10 horses in his corrals, 3 of them still half wild and needing breaking. He had cattle to check on, fences to repair where the posts were rotting. He had a life that was simple and hard and lonely in ways he tried not to think about too much, but over the next week he could not stop thinking about her. He learned from town gossip that she had found work doing laundry and mending for Mrs. Patterson and some of the other ladies in town. She worked hard, they said, did beautiful work with a needle. But still, she would not speak. Not one word. People were starting to call her strange, odd, touched in the head. "I think something terrible happened to her," Sarah Miller confided to Isaac one afternoon. "You can see it in her eyes. That girl has been through something awful." Isaac agreed, though he said nothing. What was there to say? It was late August, nearly a month after her arrival, when Isaac rode into town for supplies and found a commotion in the street. A group of men were harassing someone, their voices loud and cruel in the way men got when they had been drinking despite the early hour. "Come on, just say something. One word. I bet you got a sweet voice." Maybe she is hiding something. Maybe she is a criminal. Or maybe she is just crazy. Isaac pushed through the small crowd and saw her backed against the wall of the mercantile, her face pale, her carpet bag held in front of her like a shield. 3 men stood in a semicircle blocking her in. Isaac recognized them as ranch hands from the big spread north of town, the kind of men who thought working for someone with money gave them the right to be cruel to those who had none. "That is enough," Isaac said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that came from years of handling nervous horses and stubborn cattle. The men turned. The biggest one, a man named Dutch, grinned with too many teeth missing. "We're just having some fun, Elwood, trying to get the mute girl to talk." "She does not want to talk to you. Now move along." "Or what?" Dutch took a step toward Isaac, puffing up. Isaac did not move, did not change his expression. "Or I will make you move along, and we both know how that will end for you." It was not a boast. Everyone knew Isaac had been in his share of fights and had not lost many. He was not the biggest man around, but he was quick, and he did not quit. And that combination had earned him respect even from men who did not like him. Dutch stared at him for a long moment, then spat in the dirt. "She ain't worth it anyway." He gestured to his friends, and they ambled off, laughing too loud to cover their embarrassment. Isaac turned to her. "You all right, miss?" She was shaking. He could see it in her hands, but she nodded. "They should not have done that. I am sorry." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her face shifted. Gratitude, maybe. Or recognition that here was someone who was not asking anything of her except to be left alone. Then she did something that surprised him. She reached out and touched his arm, just briefly, just her fingers against his sleeve for a second. A thank you without words. "Let me walk you back to the boarding house," Isaac said. She hesitated, then nodded. They walked side by side through the dusty streets of Leavenworth. Isaac kept his stride short to match hers, and he did not try to fill the silence with talk. When they reached the boarding house, she paused on the steps and looked back at him. Her lips moved like she was trying to speak, but nothing came out. Frustration crossed her face, then resignation. "It is all right," Isaac said softly. "You talk when you are ready, or do not. That is your business." She blinked, and he thought she might cry again, but she just nodded and went inside. Isaac rode back to his ranch with his mind full of her. The way she moved, the sadness in her eyes, the silence that wrapped around her like armor. He told himself it was pity he felt, concern for someone in trouble, but he was starting to suspect it was more than that. The next Sunday, she was in church again. This time when Isaac slid into the pew beside her instead of across from her, she did not move away. She just looked at him with those honey-colored eyes and then back at the Reverend. After the service, he walked her back to the boarding house again without asking if she wanted him to. She let him. It became a routine. Every Sunday, he would find her in church, sit beside her, walk her home after. They did not speak because she could not or would not, and he had decided he would not push. But Isaac started talking anyway, filling the silence with stories about his ranch, his horses, the cattle drives he used to go on when he was younger. He told her about his parents, how his mother had loved her garden and his father had been a man of few words but deep loyalties. He told her about Leavenworth, about the characters in town, about the way the river looked in early morning when mist rose off the water. He had no idea if she cared about any of it, but she always listened, really listened. Her eyes on his face, her attention complete. September arrived with cooler nights and the first hints of autumn color in the trees along the river. Isaac had taken to riding into town more often than he needed to, always finding some excuse. Supplies, business at the bank, a drink at the saloon. But really, he was hoping to catch a glimpse of her. He started calling her Angel, though never to her face at first. It slipped out one evening at the saloon when someone asked who he was mooning over. "That girl from the boarding house, the one who will not talk?" "Her name is not that girl," Isaac had said more sharply than he intended. "Well, what is her name then?" Isaac realized he did not know. Nobody did. She had never said. "Mrs. Patterson said she had paid a month in advance with cash and had not given a name when she checked in, just pointed to a room and counted out money." "I call her Angel," Isaac said, and it felt right somehow. The name spread through town the way things did. Isaac Elwood's angel, people said with knowing smiles. He is sweet on her. Isaac did not deny it. How could he when it was true? He had fallen for her without meaning to, for her silence and her sadness, and the way she was so clearly running from something but trying so hard to be brave about it. He had fallen for the way she listened to his stories, for the small, almost smiles she gave him sometimes, for the graceful way her hands moved when she was sewing or folding laundry. He had fallen for a woman whose name he did not know and whose voice he had never heard. One afternoon in mid-September, Isaac was in town picking up feed when he saw her walking toward the edge of town, carrying a basket. On impulse, he followed at a distance. She walked past the last of the houses to where the prairie opened up, tall grass waving in the wind. She found a spot under a cottonwood tree and sat down, pulling a book from her basket. Isaac watched her read for a few minutes, then gathered his courage and walked over. When his shadow fell across her page, she looked up, startled. "Sorry, did not mean to scare you." He gestured to the ground. "Mind if I sit?" She considered, then shook her head. He sat down a respectful distance away, close enough to talk, but not so close as to crowd her. "What are you reading?" She showed him the cover. Jane Eyre. "Good book," Isaac said, though he had never read it. His mother had, though. He remembered her talking about it. "My mother loved that one. She said it was about a woman finding her strength." Angel looked at the book, then at him, and nodded slowly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the wind in the grass and the birds calling overhead. Then Isaac said, "I know you got your reasons for not talking, and I want you to know I do not care what they are. I do not care what you are running from or what happened before you came here. I just care that you are all right now." She turned to look at him fully, and there were tears in her eyes again. "I've been calling you Angel," he admitted, "in my head and around town. I hope that is all right. I figured you needed a name, and you look like an angel to me. Sad angel, maybe, but an angel all the same." A tear slipped down her cheek. She reached over and took his hand, squeezed it. Her hand was small in his, work roughened, but still delicate. They sat like that, hands clasped, until the sun started sinking toward the horizon. When Isaac walked her back to town, he did not let go of her hand, and she did not pull away. After that, they were together more often than not. Isaac would finish his work and ride into town, and they would walk together, or sit by the river, or just exist in the same space. He talked, she listened, and somehow it felt like the most honest conversation he had ever had. The town watched with interest and approval. Isaac Elwood was a good man, everyone agreed. If anyone could help that poor strange girl, it would be him. And she did seem happier, less like a ghost and more like a real person when she was with him. October brought the first frost in the harvest season. Isaac hired a couple of hands to help bring in the hay, and he found himself working dawn to dusk. But every evening, no matter how tired he was, he rode into town to see Angel. One evening, she was not at the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson said she had gone for a walk. Isaac found her at their spot under the cottonwood tree, wrapped in a shawl against the chill, watching the stars come out. He sat beside her, and she leaned against his shoulder without hesitation. It felt natural, right, like they had been doing this for years instead of months. "I am in love with you," Isaac said into the darkness. "I know that might seem strange since I do not even know your name or what your voice sounds like, but I love you anyway. I love your strength and your sadness and the way you listen like every word matters. I love the way you look at the world like you are trying to figure out if it is safe to trust it again. I love you, Angel." She was crying silently against his shoulder. He could feel her shaking. "You do not have to say anything," he continued. "I just needed you to know. And I want you to know that whenever you are ready to talk, I will listen. And if you are never ready, that is all right too. I will love you either way." She pulled back enough to look at him. In the fading light, her face was pale and tear-streaked and beautiful. She opened her mouth, and he could see her fighting to speak, but nothing came out. The frustration and pain in her expression broke his heart. "Shh, it is all right," he said, pulling her close again. It is all right. They sat under that tree until full dark, holding each other while the temperature dropped and the stars wheeled overhead. The next day, Isaac was mending a fence when one of his ranch hands came riding up fast. "Boss, there is trouble in town. Some men are looking for a woman. They're asking around about new arrivals, women traveling alone." Isaac's blood went cold. "What kind of men?" "Hard men. City clothes. They got that look about them, you know? Like hired guns." Isaac dropped his tools and ran for his horse. He rode into Leavenworth faster than was safe, his mind racing with possibilities, all of them bad. Angel was running from something, he had always known that. Now it seemed like what she was running from had caught up. He found her at the general store with Sarah Miller looking at thread. But Sarah's face was worried, and she gestured frantically toward the window when she saw Isaac. He looked out and saw two men in dark suits standing in front of the boarding house, talking to Mrs. Patterson. Isaac crossed to Angel in 3 long strides. "Those men, are they looking for you?" Her face went white as chalk. She nodded, terror in her eyes. "Come with me, right now." He took her hand and led her out the back of the store, around through the alley to where his horse was tied. He lifted her up into the saddle and swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist. "Hold on," he said, and urged the horse into a run. They galloped out of town, heading southwest toward his ranch. Behind them, he heard shouting. They had been seen. Isaac leaned low over the horse's neck, holding Angel tight, pushing for more speed. His ranch was 5 miles away. If they could make it there, he had guns and defensible ground. The horse was lathered and blowing hard when they finally reached his property. Isaac pulled up at the house, helped Angel down, and practically dragged her inside. "Stay away from the windows," he ordered, then went to grab his rifle and his pistol. He checked that both were loaded and ready. "Who are those men?" he asked. "What do they want?" She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. She looked around frantically, then grabbed a pencil and paper from his desk. Her hand was trembling, but she managed to write one word: husband. Isaac felt like he had been gut-punched. "You are married?" She shook her head violently and wrote more. "Forced. Ran." "He forced you to marry him?" Isaac's anger was a white-hot thing in his chest. "And those are his men?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. She wrote more. "Chicago. Rich. Powerful. Will kill me." "No," Isaac said flatly. "No, he will not. Not while I'm breathing." He went to the window and looked out carefully. No sign of pursuit yet, but they would come. Men like that always did. "How long were you married to him?" Isaac asked, trying to understand. She wrote, 3 months. He hurt me. I ran." Isaac wanted to punch something, preferably the man who had done this to her. "Is that why you will not talk? Did he do something?" She nodded, touched her throat, and wrote, "Choked me. Damaged. Doctor said maybe heal. Maybe not. Too afraid to try." So she had been hurt so badly she could not speak, and on top of that, she was too terrified to even try. Isaac felt a surge of protective rage that nearly overwhelmed him. "I will not let him take you," Isaac said. "I swear on my life I will not let him hurt you again." She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. He held her tight, stroking her hair, making silent promises to keep her safe no matter what it cost. They did not come that day or the next. Isaac kept watch, kept his guns close, and kept Angel inside. She was terrified, jumping at every sound. At night she woke screaming from nightmares, and Isaac would sit with her until she calmed down, holding her hand and talking softly about nothing and everything. On the 3rd day, they came. 4 men rode up to the ranch house in the late afternoon. 2 were the hard-looking men in suits from town. The other 2 were hired guns. That much was obvious from the way they carried themselves and the weapons they wore. Isaac stepped out onto the porch with his rifle in hand. "That is far enough." The better dressed of the suited men spoke. "We are looking for a woman, Veronica Turner. She is the wife of a very important man in Chicago, and she has run away from her legal obligations." So that was her name, Veronica. It suited her. "There is no one here by that name," Isaac said, "and this is private property. You are not welcome." "We have reason to believe you are harboring her. Mr. Turner is prepared to pay a substantial reward for her return. And I am prepared to shoot the first man who takes another step toward this house. Now get off my land." The man's face hardened. "You are making a mistake. Mr. Turner is a wealthy and powerful man. He has connections. He can make your life very difficult." "He can try," Isaac said, "but first he has to get through me, and I do not die easy." The four men exchanged glances. They had expected this to be simple. Find the girl, take her back, collect their pay. They had not expected a rancher with a rifle and a look in his eyes that said he meant every word. "We will be back," the spokesman said. "With the law." "You do that. I will be here." They rode off, and Isaac let out a breath he had not known he was holding. Inside, he found Veronica pressed against the wall, pale and shaking. "They are gone for now," he said, "but they will be back." She wrote frantically, "You should let them take me. I do not want you hurt because of me." "Not a chance," Isaac said firmly. "You are not going back to a man who hurts you. I do not care how rich or powerful he is." She started crying again, and Isaac pulled her close. "We need help, though," he admitted. "We need the law on our side, not theirs." That evening, Isaac rode into town alone, leaving Veronica locked in the house with his pistol. He went straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Tom Bradley was a friend, a former Texas Ranger who had settled in Kansas to retire from the dangerous life. He was in his 50s, honest, and had no patience for bullies. "Tom, I need your help," Isaac said, and proceeded to tell him everything. Tom listened carefully, his weathered face thoughtful. When Isaac finished, he leaned back in his chair. "So this Turner fellow, he forced her to marry him and then hurt her bad enough she cannot talk? That is what she says, and I believe her. Problem is, Isaac, the law sees it different. She is his legal wife. He has a right to her. No man has the right to abuse a woman, married or not. I agree with you morally, but legally it is complicated." "Then uncomplicate it," Isaac said desperately. "There has to be something we can do." Tom thought for a long moment. There might be. If she can prove he hurt her, she could petition for an annulment on the grounds of cruelty, but she would need to testify. She cannot speak. Can she write? Yes. Then she can write a sworn statement, and if we can get a doctor to examine her and confirm she has been injured, that would help. But Isaac, this will take time, and those men are not going to wait around. Then we need to buy time. Tom nodded slowly. "All right, here is what we do tomorrow. Bring her to town. We will get Doc Stevens to examine her and write a report. She will write out her statement, and I will hold it as an official document. If those men come back, I will inform them that the matter is under legal review and they cannot remove her from Kansas until it is settled. Will they listen? If they do not, I will arrest them for attempted kidnapping. I still carry a badge, and I'm still not afraid to use it." Isaac could have hugged him. "Thank you, Tom." "Do not thank me yet. This is just the first step. It could still go bad." The next morning, Isaac brought Veronica to town. She was terrified, but she trusted him, so she came. They went to Doc Stevens first. The old doctor was kind and professional, and he examined Veronica's throat carefully while Isaac waited outside. When it was done, Doc Stevens came out looking grim. "Whoever did that to her should be horsewhipped. Her vocal cords are damaged, and there is scarring around her throat consistent with strangulation. I cannot say for certain if she will ever speak again, but she definitely has been hurt. Will you write that down?" "I already am," Doc said, returning to his desk. He wrote a detailed medical report, signed and dated it, and handed it to Isaac. Next, they went to the sheriff's office. Tom had paper and ink ready. Veronica sat at his desk and wrote for nearly an hour, her hand cramping, tears falling onto the paper, but she kept writing. She told everything. How Garrett Turner, a wealthy industrialist in Chicago, had courted her after her parents died. How he had seemed charming at first, how quickly that changed after the wedding. How he had hit her, choked her, kept her locked in their house like a prisoner. How she had escaped one night when he was away on business, taking only what she could carry. How she had used the last of her money to travel as far west as she could get. When she was done, Tom read it carefully, then had her sign it. "This is a sworn statement," he said gently. "I will keep it safe, and I will use it to keep you safe." She nodded, exhausted from reliving her trauma. They were leaving the sheriff's office when the four men rode back into town, this time with 2 more hired guns and a man in an expensive suit who could only be Garrett Turner himself. Isaac stepped in front of Veronica, putting himself between her and the approaching men. Garrett Turner was in his 40s, handsome in a cold way, with dark hair graying at the temples and eyes like chips of ice. He looked at Veronica with an expression that mixed possessiveness and anger. "Veronica, darling, it is time to come home. You have had your little adventure, now be reasonable." Isaac felt Veronica flinch behind him. He kept his hand near his gun. "She is not going anywhere with you," Isaac said. Garrett's eyes flicked to him dismissively. "And who are you, the local farm boy she has been amusing herself with?" "Veronica, really? I thought you had better taste." "The lady is under the protection of the law," Sheriff Bradley said, stepping up beside Isaac. "She has filed a petition for annulment on the grounds of cruelty. Until that petition is reviewed, she stays here in Leavenworth." Garrett's expression hardened. "I have papers proving she is my legal wife. I have every right to take her home. And I have a sworn statement from her and a medical report showing she has been injured. I also have territorial authority to protect residents of Kansas from harm, so no, sir, you do not have the right to take her anywhere." "I could have 50 men here by tomorrow," Garrett said coldly. "And I could wire the territorial marshal and have federal law enforcement here by evening," Tom countered. "Your move." The 2 men stared at each other. Finally, Garrett turned his cold gaze to Veronica. "This is not over. You are my wife. You will always be my wife. And you will come home one way or another." "Are you threatening a citizen under my protection?" Tom asked, his hand moving to his gun. Garrett smiled without warmth. "Just stating facts, Sheriff." He turned to his men. "We will be staying at the hotel for now." They rode off, and Isaac felt Veronica's hand clutch the back of his shirt. She was shaking like a leaf. "Come on," Isaac said gently. "Let us get you somewhere safe." They ended up back at Isaac's ranch, with Sheriff Bradley following. Tom wanted to see the lay of the land. Figure out how defensible the property was if things turned violent. "You got good sight lines," Tom observed, looking around. "But 6 or 7 men could rush you, especially at night. You got anyone who can help?" "I have got 2 ranch hands who are decent with guns, and I am not bad myself." "That might not be enough if Turner decides to take her by force." Veronica was writing again. She handed the paper to Isaac. "I will go back. I cannot let people die for me." "No," Isaac said firmly. "You are not going back to a man who hurts you. We will figure this out." "Isaac is right," Tom said. "Give me a few days. I have sent a wire to the territorial marshal explaining the situation. If we can get federal involvement, Turner's money will not matter as much." Over the next week, the tension in Leavenworth was thick enough to cut. Garrett Turner and his men stayed at the hotel, watching, waiting. Isaac kept Veronica at the ranch and did not let her out of his sight. He barely slept, always listening for the sound of approaching horses. The town rallied around them in ways that surprised Isaac. Men he barely knew stopped by to offer help. "We heard what is happening," they would say. "That rich fellow has no right to hurt a woman and then come take her back. We are with you if it comes to trouble." Even Sarah Miller and some of the other women in town organized, taking turns bringing food to the ranch so Isaac did not have to leave Veronica alone to go into town. "That girl deserves a chance at a good life," Sarah told Isaac, "and you deserve happiness too. We are not going to let some Chicago bully ruin that. On the 8th day, the territorial marshal arrived. He was a hard-eyed man named Carson, who had been dealing with outlaws and troublemakers for 20 years. He listened to all sides, read Veronica's statement and the doctor's report, and then called a meeting at the sheriff's office. Isaac and Veronica attended, along with Garrett Turner and his lawyer, a slick man from Chicago who talked a lot about property rights and legal obligations. Marshal Carson listened to it all, then held up his hand for silence. Here is how this is going to work. Mrs. Turner has filed for an annulment. That petition will be reviewed by a judge, which will take time. Until then, she is free to stay wherever she chooses. Mr. Turner, you have no legal right to remove her by force. If you try, I will arrest you and your men for kidnapping and assault. Am I clear? This is absurd, the lawyer protested. She is his wife. She is also a human being with rights, Carson said flatly, and the law says a woman can petition for divorce or annulment if she can show cause. She has shown plenty of cause. Now you can wait for the legal process, or you can go back to Chicago and wait there. But you cannot take her, and you cannot harass her. If you do, you will answer to me. Garrett stood up, his face tight with rage. You are making a very foolish mistake. Marshal. Would not be the first time. Now get out of my sight before I find a reason to lock you up. Garrett and his lawyer left, but Isaac knew this was not over. Men like Garrett Turner did not give up just because the law told them to. That night, they came. Isaac woke to the sound of breaking glass and the smell of smoke. He rolled out of bed, grabbed his gun, and ran into the hallway. Flames were licking up the walls of the main room. Someone had thrown burning torches through the windows. "Veronica!" Isaac shouted. She came running from her room, coughing. Isaac grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back door. They burst outside into the cool night air just as gunshots rang out. His two ranch hands were returning fire from the bunkhouse at shadowy figures on horseback. Isaac pushed Veronica toward the barn. "Hide in the hayloft. Do not come out until I come get you." She grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with fear for him. "I will be fine. Go!" She ran, and Isaac turned to face the attackers. 6 men on horseback were circling the property, shooting at anything that moved. Isaac took cover behind a water trough and started firing back. He hit one man who fell from his saddle screaming. The fight lasted maybe 10 minutes but felt like hours. When it was over, 3 of Turner's men were down, including 1 dead. The others had fled when Sheriff Bradley and a dozen armed townsmen came riding up, alerted by the gunfire. Isaac's house was still burning, but the men formed a bucket brigade and managed to save most of it. By dawn, the fire was out, leaving the place smoke-damaged but still standing. Isaac found Veronica in the hayloft, exactly where he had told her to hide. She was crying silently, and when she saw him, she threw herself into his arms. "It is over," he said, though he was not sure if that was true. "It is over." Marshal Carson arrested Garrett Turner that morning, along with his remaining men. The charges were arson, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Turner's lawyer protested loudly, but Carson did not care. "You tried to burn a man's house down with people inside," Carson said coldly. "You are lucky I do not just hang you right here." "You have no proof I ordered this, Major," Garrett said. "I have 3 of your men in my jail saying otherwise. They are real eager to testify against you if it means lighter sentences." Garrett's face went gray. He looked at Veronica, who was standing beside Isaac. "You did this. You destroyed everything." For the first time, Veronica stepped forward. She pulled out paper and wrote quickly, then held it up for everyone to see. "You destroyed yourself." That was the last time Isaac saw Garrett Turner. The man was taken to Topeka to stand trial. His lawyer tried everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, Garrett was sentenced to 10 years in prison for arson and attempted murder. The annulment was granted by default. Veronica was free. It was late November, cold but not yet snowing, when Isaac took Veronica back to the cottonwood tree where they had spent so many evenings. The grass was brown now. the tree bare of leaves, but it was still their place. "You are free now," Isaac said. "You can go anywhere, do anything. You do not have to stay here if you do not want to." She looked at him with those honey-colored eyes, and slowly, carefully, she opened her mouth. The sound that came out was rough, painful sounding, barely a whisper, but it was a voice. "Stay," she said. Just that one word, but it was everything. "You can talk," Isaac breathed. She touched her throat, winced. "Hurts, but yes." "Angel," he said, wonder in his voice. "Veronica," she corrected, and even though her voice was rough and broken, he could hear the hint of humor in it. "Veronica," he repeated, tasting her real name for the first time. "Will you stay with me?" "Yes," she whispered. Then with great effort, "Love you." Isaac kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. When they pulled apart, she was crying again, but these were happy tears. "Marry me," Isaac said, "for real this time, not forced, not coerced, because we choose it." "Yes," Veronica whispered, "yes." They were married in the spring of 1873 in the same church where Isaac had first sat beside her all those months ago. The whole town turned out for the wedding. Veronica wore a new dress that Sarah Miller had helped her make, pale yellow like sunshine. Her voice was still rough and she spoke rarely, but when Reverend Thompson asked if she took Isaac to be her husband, she said, "I do," in a voice clear enough for everyone to hear. The reception was held at Isaac's ranch, which had been fully repaired. There was music and dancing and more food than they could possibly eat. Veronica smiled more that day than Isaac had ever seen, and he found himself unable to stop watching her, marveling that this beautiful, strong woman was now his wife. That night, alone in their home, Veronica sat beside him on the porch and spoke in her careful, rough voice. "I was so afraid when I came here. I thought I would never be safe again, never be happy." "And now?" Isaac asked, taking her hand. "Now I know what love really is. Not control, not possession, just love." They sat together watching the stars come out, and Isaac thought about how a silent woman on a stagecoach had changed his entire life. How love had found him in the last place he expected, wrapped in silence and pain, but real nonetheless. Life was good over the next few years. Isaac's ranch prospered, and Veronica proved to be as skilled at managing the business side as Isaac was at handling the animals. Her voice improved slowly with exercises the doctor in Leavenworth taught her. She would never sound quite like she probably had before. There was always a roughness to her words, but she could speak clearly enough to be understood, and that was enough. In the winter of 1874, Veronica told Isaac she was expecting a baby. He was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. "What if something goes wrong?" he worried. "Then we will face it together," Veronica said firmly. Her voice was stronger now, more confident. "I am not afraid anymore, not with you." Their son was born in late summer of 1875, during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows and drummed on the roof. He was perfect, with dark hair like Isaac's and his mother's honey-colored eyes. They named him James, after Isaac's father. Watching Veronica with their son, seeing the fierce love in her eyes, Isaac was reminded of how far she had come. The silent, terrified woman who had arrived in Leavenworth was gone. In her place was a strong, confident mother who spoke her mind even if her voice was rough and who loved with her whole heart. 2 years later, their daughter was born. They named her Rose, after Isaac's mother. She had her mother's blonde hair and her father's stubbornness. The ranch continued to grow. Isaac hired more hands and expanded his operations. Veronica kept the books and managed the household with quiet efficiency. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. In the evenings after the children were asleep, Isaac and Veronica would sit on their porch and watch the sunset paint the Kansas sky in shades of gold and pink. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence. It did not matter because they were together. "Do you ever think about Chicago?" Isaac asked one evening. Veronica considered the question. "Sometimes, but not the way you might think. I remember the girl I was, scared and alone. And I am grateful to her for being brave enough to run, because running brought me here, to you, to this life." "I am grateful too," Isaac said, "for the day that stagecoach brought an angel to Leavenworth." She laughed, a sound that still delighted him even after years of marriage. "I was no angel. I was a broken woman running for her life. You were an angel to me, still are." The years continued to pass in the gentle rhythm of ranch life. The children grew. James turned out to have his father's way with horses, able to gentle even the wildest Mustang with patience and soft words. Rose was quieter, more thoughtful, with a love for books that reminded Isaac of the first time he had seen Veronica reading under the cottonwood tree. In 1882, they had another son, Thomas, who came as a surprise when they thought their family was complete. He was a happy baby who grew into a sweet boy who loved everyone he met. Isaac's ranch became known throughout Kansas as one of the best places to buy horses. People came from as far as Colorado and Missouri to purchase animals from the Elwood ranch, knowing they were getting horses that had been treated well and trained with patience. Veronica found her own calling in helping other women who came to Leavenworth running from bad situations. She would open her home to them, give them work if they needed it, and help them find their footing in a new place. "I remember what it was like to be that scared," she told Isaac. "If I can help even one woman the way you helped me, then something good came from all that pain." In the summer of 1885, 13 years after Veronica had arrived in Leavenworth, they took their children to the cottonwood tree. It was still there, older and more gnarled, but still standing strong. "This is where your father told me he loved me for the first time," Veronica said, her voice rough but clear. The children, now 10, 8, and 3, listened with the fascination kids always had for their parents' love story. "You really did not talk for a whole month?" James asked. "More than a month," Veronica confirmed. "I was too afraid, and my throat was hurt. But mostly I was afraid." "What made you finally talk?" Rose wanted to know. Veronica looked at Isaac, smiled. "Your father made me feel safe. He never pushed me, never demanded anything. He just loved me for who I was, even when I could not speak. That kind of love makes you brave." Isaac pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. Even after all these years, he still felt the same wonder he had felt the first time she had said his name, still marveled that this strong, beautiful woman had chosen to stay with him. The town of Leavenworth continued to grow. Fort Leavenworth expanded, bringing more people, more business. The railroad came through in the late 1870s, connecting Kansas to the rest of the country in new ways. But through all the changes, the Elwood Ranch remained a constant, a place of hard work and honest dealing and love. Sheriff Tom Bradley retired in 1883, and the town threw him a party that lasted 2 days. He had become a good friend to Isaac and Veronica over the years, stopping by the ranch regularly for dinner and to check on the family. At his retirement party, he raised a glass to them, to the couple, who reminded this old lawman why we fight for justice. "May you have many more years of happiness." Marshal Carson, who had long since moved on to other territories, sent a letter that Veronica treasured. In it, he wrote, "I have dealt with hundreds of cases in my career, but yours is the one I think about most. Not because of the legal aspects, but because it reminded me that sometimes the law is not just about punishment. Sometimes it is about protection, about giving good people a chance to be happy. I am glad I could be part of that for you." As their children grew older and began to think about their own futures, Isaac and Veronica found themselves with more time alone together. They used it to reconnect, to remember who they had been before they became parents, back when they were just a cowboy and a silent woman learning to trust again. "If you could go back and change anything, would you?" Isaac asked one evening. Veronica was quiet for a long time, thinking. I would spare myself the pain of that first marriage, but I would not change anything else, because that pain brought me here, and here is where I was meant to be. In 1887, James got married to a sweet girl from town named Emily. They had their wedding at the ranch, and watching his son standing at the altar, Isaac remembered his own wedding day, how Veronica had said "I do" in her rough, brave voice. Time moved so fast, he thought. Yesterday, James was a baby in his arms, and today he was a man starting his own life. Rose showed no interest in marriage, more concerned with her books and her studies. She wanted to be a teacher, she announced, and Veronica supported her fully. Women should have choices, Veronica said firmly. No one should be forced into a life they do not want. Thomas was still young, but already he showed signs of being the peacemaker of the family, the one who could smooth over arguments and make people smile. In 1890, Isaac turned 44 and Veronica turned 40. They celebrated quietly, just the two of them, riding out to their cottonwood tree. It was summer again, hot and bright, cicadas singing in the grass. "We have had a good life," Isaac said. "The best life," Veronica agreed. "Do you ever regret calling me Angel before you knew my name?" "Never. You were an angel. You are an angel, my angel." She laughed and kissed him, and they sat under that tree until the sun began to set. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from pain and silence and love. As the years continued to pass, the Elwood Ranch remained a cornerstone of the Leavenworth community. James took over more of the daily operations as Isaac's back started to protest the long days of hard work. Rose opened a school for girls in town, teaching them reading and mathematics and encouraging them to dream big. Thomas, when he was old enough, surprised everyone by deciding to become a doctor, inspired by Doc Stevens, who had helped his mother all those years ago. "I want to help people the way Doc helped Mom," he explained. Isaac and Veronica could not have been prouder. In 1895, James and Emily gave Isaac and Veronica their first grandchild, a little girl they named Veronica Rose. Holding her granddaughter, Veronica felt a sense of completion she had not known she was missing. This tiny person represented the future, a future that would never know the fear and pain of Veronica's past. Only the love and safety that Isaac had built for her. By 1900, as the new century dawned, Isaac and Veronica were in their 50s, older but still strong, still in love. They had 4 grandchildren now, with more on the way. The ranch was thriving under James's management. Rose's school had expanded to teach over 30 girls. Thomas was in his final year of medical training. One evening, sitting on their porch with the sunset painting the sky, Veronica turned to Isaac. "Do you remember the day I arrived, when you first saw me step off that stagecoach?" "Like it was yesterday," Isaac said. "You looked so lost, so sad. I wanted to help you, but I had no idea how." "You helped me by being patient, by loving me without demands, by calling me Angel when I was too afraid to tell anyone my real name." "I still think of you as my angel sometimes," Isaac admitted, "and I still think of you as my savior, my partner, my love, the man who saw past the silence to the person underneath." They sat together as the stars came out, two people who had weathered storms and found peace. The silence between them was comfortable now, not the terrified silence of a traumatized woman, but the easy quiet of two people who knew each other so well that words were sometimes unnecessary. "I love you," Isaac said softly. "I love you too," Veronica replied in her rough, beautiful voice. "Always." In 1902, Isaac fell ill with pneumonia. For a week, Veronica sat by his bedside, refusing to leave, refusing to accept that this might be the end. Thomas, now a practicing doctor, did everything he could. Slowly, painfully, Isaac recovered, but the illness had aged him, made him weaker. "You are not allowed to leave me," Veronica told him fiercely when he was well enough to sit up. "We still have years left. I am not done with you yet." Isaac smiled weakly. "Yes, madam. Would not dream of it." He did recover, But after that, they both knew their time was limited. They had been given a gift, these 30 years together, and they treasured every moment. In 1905, they celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary surrounded by their children and grandchildren. The ranch house was full of noise and laughter and life. Looking around at all the people there, all the love that had grown from two broken people finding each other, Isaac felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "What are you thinking?" Veronica asked, coming to stand beside him. "I am thinking about that scared girl who would not speak, and how she became the strongest, bravest woman I know. How she built all of this with me." "We built it together," Veronica corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you." In the quiet moments when it was just the two of them, they would reminisce about their journey, about the month she had stayed silent, about how he had called her angel, about the night she had finally spoken his name in her rough, broken voice, about the challenges they had faced and overcome together. "If I could go back and tell that young woman on the stagecoach what was waiting for her," Veronica said one evening, "I would tell her to be brave. That pain does not last forever. That love is real, and it is worth waiting for. And I would tell that lonely cowboy that his life was about to change in the best possible way," Isaac added. As they moved into their 60s, they slowed down. The ranch was fully in James's capable hands now. Rose's school continued to flourish. Thomas had his own practice in Leavenworth and had married a wonderful woman named Clara. They had given Isaac and Veronica 2 more grandchildren. In the summer of 1910, Isaac and Veronica rode out to their cottonwood tree one last time. Isaac was 64 now, Veronica 60. The ride was harder than it used to be, but they managed. The tree was still there, ancient and gnarled, its branches spread wide. They sat beneath it, holding hands, remembering. 38 years since I arrived in Leavenworth," Veronica said. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago." "It was a lifetime ago," Isaac said. "We have lived a whole life since then, a good life." "The best life for Nuskorum," Veronica agreed. She looked at him. This man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. "Thank you." "For what?" "For everything. For patience, for love, for never giving up on me, for calling me angel when I could not tell you my name, for building this life with me." Isaac brought her hand to his lips, kissed it gently. "Thank you for staying, for trusting me, for being the strongest person I have ever known." They sat under that tree until the sun set. 2 old people who had loved each other through everything life threw at them. When it was time to go home, Isaac helped Veronica to her feet, and they rode back slowly, side by side, the way they had always been. Isaac Elwood passed away peacefully in his sleep in November of 1912, 2 months after his 66th birthday. He was surrounded by his family, with Veronica holding his hand. His last words were "Angel," whispered so softly that only she could hear. Veronica Turner Elwood lived another 8 years, dying in 1920 at the age of 70. In her final moments, with her children and grandchildren gathered around her, she smiled and said in her rough, beloved voice, "I see him, my cowboy. He is waiting for me." They were buried side by side in the Leavenworth Cemetery under a shared headstone that read, "Isaac Elwood, 1846-1912, Veronica Turner Elwood, 1850-1920. He called her angel. She called him home together forever." The cottonwood tree where they had spent so many evenings still stands today, a silent witness to a love story that began with silence and ended only when death parted them. Locals call it the angel tree, though few remember why. But the story lives on in the Elwood family, passed down through generations. A story about a woman who would not say her name for a month straight, and the cowboy who named her Angel until she spoke. A story about patience and healing and the transformative power of love. A story about 2 broken people who found each other and built something beautiful that lasted long after they were gone. Their legacy lived on through their children and grandchildren, through the ranch that still operates today under the Elwood name, through Rose's school that eventually became one of the finest educational institutions for women in Kansas, through Thomas's medical practice that served Leavenworth for over 40 years. But most of all, their legacy lived on in the proof that love, real love, can heal even the deepest wounds and give voice to even the most profound silence. In the end, that is what their story was about, not about the pain that brought them together, but about the love that kept them together. Not about the month of silence, but about the lifetime of words that followed. Not about the angel who fell, but about the cowboy who caught her and the way they flew together. And somewhere, perhaps, under an old cottonwood tree on a Kansas prairie, two spirits still sit together watching the sunset, holding hands, speaking the language of love that needs no words at all.